Serious. What was your biggest we need to leave now moment? Was 15 or 16 at a house party with my good friend, another girl. There were some gate crashers who turned up which weren't unusual at London house parties, but these guys were older and there was just a vibe. A girl I vaguely knew was very drunk and being surrounded by them, and I asked her if she was okay and she told me to fuck off, I'm fine. I looked at my friend and said to her I'm gonna call my mum and dad to come get me. Do you want a lift? My parents were always amazing and said to me that if I was at a party or out and for any reason didn't want to be where I was I could call them and they would come and get me. My parents turned up, coats on over pajamas, and took us both home. Apparently half an hour after we left, someone was stabbed, the girl we had asked earlier was sexually assaulted, and lots of stuff was stolen, and people beaten up and held up at knife point. I had such a feel in the air that I've hardly felt before or since, and knew we needed to not be there. You got some good parents. When I was about 16, I went to visit my grandmother at her place. The smell of natural gas was intense, even though Nana didn't seem to notice it much. She was groggy, sort of half asleep, not her usual responsive self. So I made her get out of the house at once and open the windows and doors. I called Dad and he reported it to the gas company, who sent inspectors right away. They shut off the gas valve in the street immediately and sent a repair crew to fix a leaking joint in the gas supply pipe. The inspector said that if I hadn't acted then and there, the probability was great that there would soon have been an explosion. Met this cute girl at a party. Spent the whole night dancing and flirting. Offered to drive her home and she agreed. We were making out in the car in front of her house when another car pulls up with their headlights beaming at us. I ask if that's a neighbor and if we're blocking their driveway. She replies no, that's my husband. Husband's car door opens and I nope the fuck out of there. Dropped her straight back at the party and never saw her again. Her excuse was that they were separated and he shouldn't have a problem with it. I sure wasn't sticking around to find out. Edit. Holy shit, that's a lot of upvotes. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing everyone's similar stories. Thank you all. Probably 2 months after my wedding, I invited my then best friend, maid of honor, to a party my husband and I were going to. She agreed. Sometime into it, I'm drunken in the pool, and my husband swims out to me to tell me she just asked him to sleep with her. I have never sobered up or left somewhere so fast. Oh damn, that sucks. Good on your husband for telling you though, and you for trusting him. Too often this kind of thing doesn't get dealt with because people don't want to cause a fuss, or the other person just thinks they're trying to start shit. My husband is a good man and an honest person. He knew this was an absolute no-no for her, and it was up to her to make amends or apologize. Which she never did. We were sitting on the sand at the beach, talking and having drinks. I looked up at the sky behind my friends and saw this huge dark ominous cloud mass moving towards us. I got up and said, guys, we have to leave now. Huge thunderstorm coming right at us. We have about 5 minutes. We managed to reach the car, but had to sit in it for a good hour while the wind and rain ravaged everything around us. Trees were left bare, benches were upturned, trash cans were dragged for half a mile. The beach club tents were blown away, and some people were seriously injured when stuff fell on them. It was all over the news that evening. My friends still talk about how I saved them that day. Most people didn't move from where they were sitting, even though we tried to warn them. Went to a sketchy party. It's in a building that's pretty obviously recently abandoned. No one checked my ID, and the bar was a coffee table full of 2 liters and fifths. Hey, whatever, I'm over 21, and this is more fun than the shitty club. I did, however, kinda move towards the back. Saw a lot of guys with 6-packs, and just a lot more people in general. Music is getting cranked up, kids are getting crunk. I figure if no one's gonna stop me, I'm going to grab a 6-pack at the party store, and if the party chills back out I can hang around, and if it sucks I can drink it at home. I found a store down the block, got some beers, and came back to see 20+ cop cars surrounding the place. Drank the beers at home. LOL, I thought you were talking about some really buff guys in the party, then I realized what you mean by 6-packs. About 2 months ago I'd stayed up past my usual bedtime, and as soon as I got in bed I smelled something odd and was hearing some inconsistent banging and clattering from downstairs. I don't live in a great neighborhood so none of this was unusual, but I got out of bed to check anyway and saw flames licking up the side of the building. Yelled at my wife to get out of bed and threw on some clothes, and we hightailed it out. Our building has a shared wall with the next, and that one had an apartment on the ground floor fully engulfed. By the time we made it outside, ended up condemning the whole building. I was the first one to call 911. Have been jerking myself awake in the night pretty consistently since then. When I was 7, our next door neighbor came pounding on our front door to scream at and threaten to kill my dad because our pet that we kept in our backyard was being too loud. The pet was a rabbit. A rabbit. Life can just be weird at times. Me and a good friend of mine were drinking at the bar, about 8 beers in or so, and we started talk about womenfolk. He started complaining about he's doubting about his, at the time, 2-year relationship with his girlfriend. What we didn't know was that his girlfriend had just entered the bar and heard a great deal of it. She quietly announces her presence, and they were both sort of staring at each other. You could almost hear their telepathic conversation. How long did you long enough shit? Then they simultaneously started staring at me, and I just said something along the lines of, well, this has been fun, but I have to go because, bye. They had a big fight, but they're still together, and now we're facing the door when we're getting shit-faced. Lesson learned. Honestly, this kinda sounds like it may have been a good thing for them. If he wasn't bringing shit up with her, they couldn't work on it. Communication in a relationship will always give an answer to the problem one way or another. At last, my moment. I'm still very proud of this decision. So it's January of 2014, Southeast US. It's a work day. News has been talking about a chance of snow, but school isn't cancelled, so off to work I go. Around 11 a.m., snow flurries start falling. There's talk that schools will be closing early. At 11:30 a.m., I look out into the parking lot and suddenly see that the snow flurries are starting to stick to the asphalt. I tell my co-workers, "You should go, snow's going to get bad." And to back up my words with action, I go home. Fast forward 24 hours, and you have 8,000 children stuck. My co-workers that stayed at work just another hour ended up trapped in cars overnight or had other adventures. Being from Massachusetts, I find this hysterical. I can see why it would cause so much havoc, though. Glad you were okay. Years ago, I was at a nightclub at a casino and started dancing with a hot blonde Russian and a cute Chinese girl. One thing led to another, and then abruptly ended once I found out the casino employed the Chinese girl to entertain the Russian mobster's girlfriend while he was gambling with the other mobsters. The Chinese girl was fluent in Russian BTW. I might have been drunk and horny, but I'm not stupid. Damn dude, you lost the opportunity to get 2 beautiful bullets in the back of your head while suiciding yourself. I kinda got the vibe in retrospect that I was being used by the Russian to piss off the boyfriend. She came on way too fast and too strong watching her, and the Chinese girl kiss was wild though. My sophomore year of high school, I decided I wanted to go to a party. It seemed innocuous, and the kind older brother of the host even offered me some good weed. I'd never had any before, and this guy was offering to share, so he was totally legit, right? A few minutes later I started feeling awful. Like I was very lightheaded and felt like I was about to pass out. I turned to my friend and told her we needed to leave, so we quickly tried to grab all out stuff and leave. All of my spidey senses were tingling, and I kept trying to unlock the front door and couldn't get all 4 or 5 of the deadbolts unlocked. Then everything went black and someone picked me up and slammed me into the wall, asking why the fuck are you trying to leave? I don't remember much, but somehow by some miracle my friend got me out of his arms and out the door. Found out later that the guy's older brother had a history of lacing weed and date raping girls, so I'm so unbelievably glad I got out of there. Remember kids, don't do drugs and always trust your spidey senses. I was in college when I had my first solo apartment. This guy across the hall would come over or invite me over and we'd hang out a few times. However, I would not call him a friend. One night he asks me to loan him some money. In addition to not wanting to loan him money, I don't really have any, so he proceeds to ask for a ride to see his girlfriend because she has some money for him. I agree. We arrive at her apartment and a small party is going on. When we walk into the party, everyone immediately shuts up and stares at us. He runs off to find his girlfriend, who I find out is his ex-girlfriend. It is awkward because I'm kind of this guy's friend by association, and I'm getting lots of angry stares. He gets into an argument with her, and we are basically thrown out of this place. He then asks if I can take him to another part of town. He owes another guy some money and needs to go talk to him. We proceed to an unfamiliar part of town, and he instructs me to park in a fairly isolated spot. He explains that he doesn't want the other guy to see my car because he might take it. He owes this guy money for gambling or drugs or something else bad, and he is way behind on his payments. I left him and spent the rest of my time in that apartment avoiding him. New Year's Eve in Moscow. A dark-haired brown man was drinking with my SO blonde white woman in a bar, getting friendly with some locals who tried their best to speak English. So friendly that one of them gave us a Matryoshka doll that he was going to give to his mother later that night. They seemed a little too friendly, and maybe they just were, but at one point I went to order more drinks, and the bartender, who had been watching and serving us, gave me a stern look and said, "You should leave now." I found this a little strange and unexpected, so naturally tried to question what he meant, but his face was drop dead serious. He looked at the friendly group, then at my GF, then to me and repeated his words. I didn't really want to take any chances in Russia and wanted to see another bar anyway, so I grabbed my girl, the doll, and promptly left. Was in Mexico City with family including 2 daughters. Grabbed a cab on the street around 10 p.m. to take us back to the hotel. I was somewhat familiar with the area since we had been there 4 or 5 days already. Cabby totally passes the hotel district and starts heading away from the part of town we were in. Streets were getting more and more residential. I demanded that he pull over, and we GTFO and walked back to the hotel, probably 3 or 4 miles. He was probably just padding the fare, but I was not going to take a chance on being kidnapped, so we flew. That's so scary. Just spent a few days in Mexico City, and we were so happy that Uber is a thing, and we didn't have to worry about accidentally hailing a fake taxi. Definitely, I had a similar feeling, but I was on a Pasero bus just east of Mexico City, Ciudad Niza. Definitely would not want to get caught too late out there. Sknilev airshow catastrophe. I was 5-ish at a time, so it's my dad's story more than mine. You can Google the details, but long story short, my dad saw the plane jolt in the air, and he realized that something went wrong and started running and yelling at everyone else to run. I was sitting on his shoulders, so he just took off with me. The plane crashed into the crowd, killing 77 people, 35 or so children among them. Not us. Sknilev airshow disaster. Wikipedia. The authorities blame pilot error, but following the disaster, the pilot stated that the flight map which they had received differed from the actual layout. On the cockpit voice recorder, one pilot asks, "And where are our spectators?" Others have suggested that the pilots were slow to react to automated warnings issued by the flight computer. Amazing reactions of your dad, but God, that's such a hard thing for him to live with. I was nearly in an airshow crash, the Shoreham crash in 2015. I was 15, and we were about to drive somewhere. As I was getting in the car, I realized I had forgotten my jacket and went back to get it. Took maybe a minute at most. We were only a few hundred meters from where the plane crashed onto our road, killing 11 people, including my teacher's son. I felt so guilty when I saw her that he had been on one part of the road and me on another, and how things turned out. I used to love air shows, but don't know if I'll go to one again. Wasn't going to that one, just driving past, but had been to the same one before. I've witnessed 2 fatal air show crashes, and I'll never go to another air show. Not worth it. I was a teenager and my male neighbor hired my preteen sister and I to clean his apartment. I was in the middle of doing the dishes when a guy started rambling about he didn't want to hurt us, but he had a good 12 inches. I told my sister we had to go now, and she argued that we were not done and wouldn't get paid. I convinced her to leave and we ran home where I told my dad what happened. Dad went and talked to the guy. I don't know what transpired between them, but later neighbor guy comes over with a black eye, apologized and paid us. Good on you, Dad. I feel like implying you want to rape some children deserves worse than a black eye and saying sorry. Like a black eye and a broken neck, but that's just me. I've wrote about this before. I was in a mall in Indonesia and 2 tourists seemed to be having problems communicating with the cashier at a bookstore, so I helped translate. They wanted to buy me drinks to thank me. Told them it's not necessary and I have to get back to my mom soon. They told me to meet them for dinner. Told them I have to have dinner at home. They told me to sneak out and meet them after dinner. At this point, a bookstore staff noticed something was wrong and went up to question them. My sister and I dashed off while they were distracted. Continued wandering around the mall and realized they were following us. To see if we were just paranoid, we ducked into a lingerie store since we figured 2 men won't usually need to go lingerie shopping together. They followed us in. Ran so quickly back to the jewelry store our mom was at. The store had intimidating security guards and I guess that stopped those guys. I was 11, my sister was 10. About a decade ago, I was driving my Miata with a friend to a track about 4 hours from home. We left after dinner the night before so we could wake up there and get an early start. About an hour from our destination, 11 p.m. a crazy summer storm hit, heavy rain, high wind gusts, lots of debris. I told my buddy that early 90s windshield wipers couldn't keep up, I couldn't see shit, and I just felt like I was white-knuckling the steering wheel. I decided to hit the exit, we'd get some late-night food at a Waffle House and wait out the storm. We sat down and I had a TV in sight and I was casually watching. Almost immediately, a weather map came up and showed a tornado pass right over where we would have been a few minutes later had I not exited. At a party when I was about 19. I was on the top floor with my friend and he mentioned to me that he and the guy in the corner had been in a pretty nasty fight about a year ago. That guy is giving us some eyes and staring us down. My friend said not to worry, but I did not like the vibe this guy was giving. I saw the guy talk to his friend and send him out of the room. I told my buddy, nope, we are leaving now. Much to his protest, as there was a girl he liked at this party. I practically ran down the stairs, grabbed our other friend by the hood of his sweatshirt and ran to the car. As we are backing out of this long country driveway, I see the guy, his buddy and 4 or 5 more of them run out of the house with baseball bats and they chased us down the driveway. So damn glad we got out of there when we did. In college, there was a big rock or cliff at the top of a hill that everybody used to climb. It had lights pointing at it to light it up at night. Some friends and I decided to climb up to the top at night. It was a nice evening, but there was a chance of rain. So we get to the top and I see lightning in the distance. I count the time between lightning and thunder, 15 seconds. I tell my friends, hey, that storm is coming our way, and I'm guessing we have 15 to 20 min before it gets here. It took some convincing for them to agree that even though I was being a negative Nancy we would head back down. Getting down took about 15 minutes. Just before we got to the cars, lightning hit the rock and blew out all the lights. Edit. Everybody made it off the rock. When the lightning struck, one of my friends said, don't say I told you so. Driving to Disney with Hubs and 2 little kids, 4 and 5. Stopped at a gas station in Tifton, Georgia at about 10 p.m. Wandering a little bleary-eyed with the 2 kids looking for the bathroom. Clerk looks at me funny and points. While I'm in there I hear, she's got 2 babies with her man. Just let them pee and go. I grab both kids and walk straight back to the car with only a small head nod to the clerk. Hubs was done pumping gas and about to go in himself. I yelled for everyone to get in the car, I would explain later. As soon as we pulled out I called 911. The operator told me they were already en route and to vacate the scene, took my info and wished us a fun trip. Walked into a gas station robbery with 2 little kids, peed and left with no issues. Bad gas wasn't that bad of a guy and let us go. Amen for that clerk, honestly. I wonder if he was what convinced them to leave you alone. It was a youngish late teens early 20s guy. I don't know what made the thief let us walk, but I'll forever be thankful to the clerk for pleading for us. We passed a line of police cars as we drove away. I never got contacted, but I know from a news report gunfire was exchanged, no one was injured, and the thief was arrested. We stopped by on our way back to thank the guy, but the store was shut down. Woodstock 99. Felt the energy of the grossly overpacked crowd, the building rage, and looked my friends and said we need to go. They stayed, I left. Shortly after fire and riot started and my friends lost everything they had with them. Tents, clothes, food, everything. When you have 300k people shoulder to shoulder in 104-degree humidity and charge $4 for a bottle of water and have half as many bathrooms as needed, you're gonna have a bad time. I was there. I'm wondering where you found water as cheap as $4 a bottle. I remember seeing them raise the price of water as the heat went up. Started at $4 per bottle, which was an outrageous sum at the time, and went up as high as $6. I was going to post the same. We were thick in the middle of the crowd during the RHCP set when people started lighting fires. I grabbed my friend and dragged her out of there back to the tent. I barely slept that night. Things had been rowdy at certain points before that, but this felt different. It makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up just remembering it. Same kind of experience, but Roskilde 2000 Pearl Jam concert. Reality of it all hit us only the next morning, with about 500 missed calls from our parents. The memorial grove for the victims is beautiful. I was at the show in Oslo the day prior to Roskilde. My family knew I was going to see them around that time, but didn't really remember where I'd be, and they were definitely freaking out for a while. American in Europe for a few months. It was back when I didn't have a cell phone with me because international calling to the US was so expensive, and I just used phone cards to call back from payphones, so I didn't even talk to them until a couple days later. I was at a club and a guy pulled up and parked next to us as we were getting out to head in. The guy then proceeded to reach in the back of his SUV and pull out a shotgun. He looked over at us and told us, "It's finna go down." We got back in our vehicle and noped out. "Homeboy, did you a solid LOL blurst gang activity." And a good evening to you too, Sir Tips Hat. You a D-Town local as well? My father's story. 1999, 3 adult males entered our family store in July wearing heavy trench coats. They spread out through the store, and my father caught a glimpse of a gun under their coats. He called the police, and while waiting for a call back, my mother grabbed the children and ran out the back door. Once we got a call back, an employee answered the phone and asked who called the police. The men ran out of the store, went down 2 doors, robbed the laundromat, and killed the clerk. Wait. In 1993, if you called the cops, you had to wait for them to call back? LOL, I just picture your dad leaving a message on a machine. "Hi, there's 3 guys with guns about to rob my store. You can reach me at 555. You could get a fucking busy signal, man. It could be real bad. I was a child of an abusive alcoholic in the 90s. But if you did connect, your address was on their screen." Visiting Kowloon in Hong Kong, I ended up walking all day until my feet were killing me. It got dark outside and I was tired, so I decided to drop by a decent-looking bar for a drink and a moment to rest my feet. It was all empty except a group of serious-looking local men in suits. They kept leering at me the whole time, the most awkward beer I ever had. None of them said a word, but I got the message. "You're not supposed to be here, Gualo." I wonder what the staff thought of you? I would think that they would try to warn you or just straight up refuse service. Had a similar experience with a Greek place. They told me they were closed. At like 7 p.m. on a Friday night. Edit. This was in the United States. Word is that the place was a mob front. Late afternoon in the summer, I'm waiting in the bus station near my house. Most businesses are closed, not a lot of cars in the street. Guy passes in front of me. He passes again 2 minutes later watching me suspiciously. Alarms start to go in my head screaming to me that I need to leave and get the fuck off here, but I ignore it since the bus will come in 10 minutes. Third time he passes he charges to me, pushing me to the wall with his cock out. I freeze for some seconds then start punching and kicking him. I manage to get away, and the rest is history. Yeah, trust your guts, guys. If something like that happens again, take out your phone and call someone. Talk loudly, tell them where you are, and just stay on the phone until either someone picks you up or the bus comes. I had a weird thing where someone who was walking in front of me on my way home from the train cut through the woods and he ended up behind me. I was only a few streets from home, but I called my mom and let her know what was up. She met me on the other side of the park with the dog in the car. The guy sped up and passed me at that point. It could have been nothing, but it could have been something also. Better safe than sorry. I was being followed on my walk home after work, also female and work in a bar, so it was around 2 a.m. I was only 1 door away from my building, but I live alone and on the ground floor, so I really didn't want him knowing where I lived, even if I could get inside safely. A guy was going into his apartment building next door, and I hurried up to him to ask him if I could just wait in his lobby for a few minutes. He was super nice and even checked outside for me. When the guy was gone I went home. To everyone who has ever helped a random person who came up to them panicked. Seriously, thank you. My friends and I stopped at a 7-Eleven around midnight in a sketchy neighborhood. We'd taken a wrong turn and were trying to find our way back to the highway. 2 police officers were getting coffee and donuts. A group of local youths came in, kind of roughly messing with each other. The police officers looked at them, looked at us, looked at each other and power walked out of the store. My friends and I decided not to complete our snack food purchases and made to leave, and then one of the youths yelled to his friends that we'd called him a racial epithet when we hadn't even spoken to them. I'm glad my car started on the first try and glad no one was coming the other way as I ran a couple stop signs.
Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Tell me what you dislike or love about this video, so please comment below and hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime a new video is released. This is a WeCrow Media production.